Doug, in advance of the draft tonight, multiple reports, including The Athletic and ESPN, report that the Wizards and Golden State Warriors have agreed on a trade that would send Chris Paul to Golden State. Jordan Poole would be on his way to the Wizards.
Wow. Okay, so first, as you guys know, I love Chris Paul. I'm like one of the last defenders of Chris Paul. And I believe this accomplishes what I thought all along it could accomplish. Now, I don't know if that means he stays there for good. I don't. But if he does stay there for good, this means Chris Paul comes off the bench. And I think Chris Paul that's awesome for him. That's a massive step. I don't think you can win an NBA title with Chris Paul as your starting point guard anymore. It's hard enough to win with LeBron as a starter at his age, considering like your body just doesn't move the same anymore, right? But that means they get out of the Jordan Poole business, they get into the Chris Paul business. Of course, I believe he could still be waived after the 28th. And so that would be interesting if that's what they did it for, is to get Jordan Poole off their books. Because the way NBA trades have to work is it has to be dollar for dollar, but only in that year, right? So Jordan Poole has a multi-year extension, multi-year contract that Golden State no longer has on the books. So it cleans the books up for years to come, gets him out of their locker room as he was a disaster in the playoffs, and everybody seems to have soured on him as a player, maybe not as a person. And I guess the question becomes, can Chris Paul coexist on a team with Steph Curry? Man, it's really hard to play them at the same time, considering their size. And though Chris Paul in his prime was a plus defender, he's not in his prime, and he and Steph Curry are little.
Shams has added that the Warriors would send Poole a protected first-round pick in 2030 and a second-rounder in 2027 to the Wizards for Chris Paul.
What do you think, Dan?
I just go back to this past season and how much of a disaster it was for Golden State and all of the tensions that were going underneath the surface. And then when the Warriors season ended, they're like, oh, yeah, that played a huge deal in it. But apparently the deal was such a big deal that Jordan Poole's the one that got ousted. So that whole dynamic is crazy to me. Where I'm honestly, Doug, I'll just say this. I'm wondering if there were just a lot more Golden State Warriors were glad that Draymond threw that punch than maybe I realized. And maybe I'm in the minority in thinking that, but yeah.
I agree.
I'll meet you guys halfway. I don't think they love that he threw the punch. But I think they all understood what he was trying to express right? Like,
yeah.
It's the code red. That's what it is.
Well,
sorry. Dan, have you seen A Few Good Men? I'm not saying it to be a jerk.
No,
I'm
but I know
because
Jack Nicholson.
You have told us that you are not a movie guy, and I don't want to make a movie reference that a lot of people get, some people don't get. Okay, so the code red was like a way of keeping dudes in line, right? And they were told not to order the code red, and then pulled aside like, yeah, or the code red. And nobody wanted. Was it Santiago? Was one of the who was the guy who died? Jay Stu. Which character died? Lieutenant Santiago died? Can't remember.
Santiago died, yep.
Okay. So, I don't think you wanted Jordan Poole to be Santiago and get knocked into smithereens, but his attitude was he was feeling himself, right? And what happened was the punch was so violent, and because the video leaked, he became a victim in this thing, and he was, but it didn't serve its purpose. And the purpose was, dude was feeling himself, acting like he was a star, and he hadn't done, in their minds, nearly enough to be acting the way he acted, and then he got paid at a level above his actual talent. Anyway, sorry, Dan.
You're exactly right. And the leak, remember the leak was the problem that the Warriors had. It was the biggest issue with them. And like, who leaked it? Who leaked it?
Yeah, it wasn't why did he punch him?
Yes,
it was,
exactly.
Exactly. Great point. What were you going to say, Jay Stu?
I just don't really see this as the Warriors even keeping Chris Paul. I think this was an addition by subtraction. I think this was a way to kind of make the money work. Do you think that there's a chance that Chris Paul still becomes this free agent that plays for the Clippers or Lakers?
Yes.
And that speaks a lot to how much of a cancer Jordan Poole was there, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think he became a very polarized. I don't even know if he became a polarizing figure. Like, look, that's my. I said this, and then honestly, if you guys remember, I said that Draymond's punch ruined their season, and Draymond said that his punch ruined their season, and Steve Kerr said it ruined their season, but there was a reason behind it, and I think it has a lot more support. I mean, he was so bad in the playoffs. So bad. Now he goes to Washington where he can take every shot, and no one will ever hear from him again. It is basketball purgatory. Wow. That is a bad contract. That's the dictionary definition of a bad contract. You know what I want to do? I want to talk about, and we kind of got into this a little bit. Right? Jordan Poole has been traded. Right? Jordan Poole has been traded to the Washington Wizards. And we started to talk about this last hour. And I don't want to steal this as my own. I do. Many people in my position would take what you guys said and steal it as their own. I think it was Beyer. Was it Beyer who said it first, or was it you, Jason? I think Beyer, you said it first. Where if you judge the reaction of the Warriors when the punch was publicized, it told you what you needed to know. Is that about right? Am I saying this right?
Yeah, I thought that there was so much more apparently under the surface that was going on that we have now realized. But also when the punch happened, how they were more worried about the leak than the actual punch. That's what I said. Essentially you are saying that guys kind of agreed with it. Yes. Yep.
What are the other layers to it, Jay Stu? I have a couple, but I'm wondering yours.
Oh, by the way, on Dan's point, that's what frustrated me this entire season was the lack of reporting on this. And I think you and I talked about on the podcast, like the sycophantish way that the sport is covered. Nobody asked them about the punch the entire season. They were just like, I wonder what's wrong with the Warriors. Andrew Wiggins is out. But nobody asked the question during the season. But after the season, then the questions came, and Steve Kerr admitted it was an issue. But yeah, no, I think that I love this aspect of it, that they were so willing to get rid of a young, good player that they traded him for a guy that I don't even think is going to see the court for the Warriors. That layer is fascinating to me.
Chris Haynes did report that Golden State is going to keep Chris Paul.
That's what I meant, that he'll probably play with the Warriors. And it does show you how disingenuous these guys are. Mike Dunleavy Jr. less than a week ago. It's like, oh, yep, Jordan's our guy. He's here for 6 years. He's our guy. For first chance he got rid of him.
Yeah, but you don't know you're going to get a veteran aging point guard that always gets hurt. Those guys just don't come on the market too often.
Correct. Correct. I think there's other layers to it as well. I think there's the layer of there's a new GM. We talk about this all the time, fellas, which is you got to have a rabbi in the room. And the guy who signed that deal with Jordan Poole is no longer the general manager of the team. And so whether Mike Dunleavy Jr. on his own was ready to get rid of him, or whether he spoke for everybody else in the organization that rolled their eyes when the deal was given, it just so happens that the second Bob Myers quits his job, that Jordan Poole is gone. There's a bunch of levels. There's he doesn't have his protector anymore. There's as Dan pointed out, I don't think they liked the violence, but I do think they definitely agree that dude was was talking out of his rectum, right? Was feeling himself is the thing. And there was some sort of code red, that was recommended, and he went above and beyond, and then, of course, the tape leaked. But that they did agree with it. I think there's those layers to it. And then I think also, there's the reality to the new salary, the new CBA and what's coming. This is the last year of the Chris Paul deal. That deal's got a bunch more years, and they got to clean up the books so they can figure out how to bring back Draymond Green and figure out what the rest of their roster looks like. That is a layered move. That's the perfect way to say. What else am I missing? Anybody else got any other layers?
Yeah, I got two because okay. 1.5 because I agree with the Draymond thing. Now I think we all expected Draymond going to be there, but I think this is another step where Golden State sides with him and they move forward. I mean, he's the guy that threw the punch, and he's the guy that they want to keep. I also think, and I know you mentioned Chris Paul's contract, but I also think it's interesting on the Warriors believing that their championship window is still open. And I just don't know if it's as open as we think that it is or they think that it is. A lot of what I hear, Doug, once Klay Thompson gets back, how do you know that this past season's Klay Thompson isn't going to be the Klay Thompson that we now know? And I think that that's a big part of it as well. But this move would make you think that Golden State thinks, all right, at least for next season, that their championship window is wide open. And I think that's interesting.
Well, I would... So you don't think they're a championship caliber team?
No, I do, but the thing that I hear, and a couple of things that I've heard this offseason is, once Klay gets back to being Klay, and I don't think that that's ever going to happen, at least the Klay that we knew.
I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you. I mean, it's not just that he's getting older, it's that he also has had a catastrophic knee and Achilles injury.
Yes.
So this is, will he make some shots that he didn't make? Probably, but he's not going to move better. He's going to move worse because that's what happens when you get older. Remember, Klay's up at the end of this year as well. Chris Paul's up at the end of this year. I guess the question becomes, we'll know a lot about what they think their championship window looks like based upon the length of the Draymond deal. Right? Again,
yep.
You could essentially be out of the business of both of those two guys at the end of the year, opening up a bunch of money. And here's a question. I didn't know this. I swear to God I didn't know it, and I should, because it should be. But I'm going to admit something. I didn't realize till I was watching him play in the NBA playoffs that Steph Curry's 35.
Time flies, right?
No, he's 35 years old. We're all saying, LeBron James, look, he's 38, he'll be 39 next year. And LeBron's a freak of nature. Steph's amazing. But he's clearly reached a point in which his career, at some point here, it's going to start to slide. How fast it slides, how bad it slides, that's different. Okay? But he's past the point of he's going to get better. You just don't get better at that point. So I think there's a world there where they're telling us differently, that we think their championship window. I think maybe their championship window is a year or two, and maybe they do as well. But I didn't even realize till this year, till the playoffs, when I'm watching him play, and I was talking about the Lakers, and it's like, well, Steph's a lot younger. How much younger? He's 3 years younger than 4 years younger than LeBron. And remember, LeBron is, he's a freak of nature. Nobody plays as well as long as LeBron. And go look at, LeBron was never hurt in his career. When did he start to get to hurt? Anybody?
Late 30s?
It was the groin injury in Golden State. How old was he?
35?
Correct.
The only reason that I knew Steph was kind of old was I just remember the tournament run in 2008. I'm like, man, that was 15 years ago. I don't think I would have put it at 35, and he was a junior that year at Davidson.
It's so crazy. So crazy. Like the LeBron thing is easy for me because my first big assignment on ESPN radio, my break, if you will, was the 2003 NBA draft, and it's 20 years ago. So I'm like, I've been here the whole time. But Steph Curry creeping up on you and at being 35 years old this year, that one comes at you fast.